Welcome to the CX Sessions from the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Every episode, we provide an innovative perspective on customer experience from the people who are changing your world, one experience at a time.
Welcome back to CX Sessions from Melbourne, Australia. I'm your host, Simon Chris, and joining me today, also based in Melbourne, is Luke Jamieson. He's an absolute thought leader, divergent thinker in the field of employee engagement, and it's great to have you here. Luke, welcome to the sessions.
G'day, Simon. How are you? It's nice to actually do a podcast in Australia and not have to be up at 6 a.m. It's great.
Yeah, in Australia too, for an Australian audience. Because we are all Australian, I do want to kick off by recognising the traditional custodians of the lands that we meet on and pay my respects to elders past and present. Luke, you've got a huge presence both on stage and off stage on social media, but in case there's someone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know who you are, a little bit of a shameless self-promotion. Talk to us about yourself.
Oh, okay. Look, by way of background, just quickly, I've got around 20 years experience in the contact center and customer experience space, and I landed in that space after being a baker and a pastry chef, and obvious transition. And then but I fell in love with it and realized that whole space needed to be turned upside down and needed some real, what I felt like needed more leadership and presence. And that was kind of my mission, and worked on that for 20 years and have run my own business. And I've seen all sides of contact centers, from BPOs to running contact centers directly to strategy to consulting. So it's been, and now technology side of things. So it's, I've got a full 360 view of that industry, and I still absolutely love it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, because you spent quite a bit of time early on in the superannuation space, right? For a couple of superannuation firms.
I did, yeah. It was, that was an awesome time. This is a shameless plug, but I do like this one, is that there was a Roy Morgan survey that surveyed all of the super funds customer experience over the years, over a 10-year period. And every time that I was at an organization in those years, they were the number one performing super fund for customer experience. So I do say it was all for me. I'm sure. No, but it was always quite funny when I saw that. But I spent a lot of time in the superannuation sector. I love that. It's all really purpose driven stuff in superannuation, which is sometimes not always the case in financial services. So it's nice having something that's purpose driven. The whole idea of giving dignity in retirement, I think is really important. So. And look, I had some fun stuff there. That was the ability to build contact centers from scratch, and one of those was recognized as the best contact center in the world in 2013. So that was a bit of a highlight.
Yeah, wow. And for those of us that are closer to retirement, thank you. But I do want to double click a little on this, and that's a phrase I've recently picked up from my podcast. Double click on this transition from pastry chef into contact center. You have to talk that through. I mean, I don't think anybody in contact centers ever left school and thought, I'm going to be a call center manager. They all kind of fell over it, but that's an interesting kind of transition.
Yeah, it is. I mean, baking, let's be honest, it's pretty rough hours. It was starting at midnight, finishing at sort of 8, 10 a.m. So mates and girlfriends became pretty scarce. So after running my own business as a baker and pastry chef, I finished my apprenticeship, ran all that, and I'd had enough. So I started to look around for other opportunities. I actually it wasn't a direct transition. I did some marketing and sales and ad space. I was in the ad industry for a little bit. I moved to Melbourne, and then when I moved to Melbourne, I just took a call center job as a stepping stone, which is to a point. That's what we often advertise contact center roles as, right?
Absolutely. Come for the
stepping
job, turn it
stone,
into a
yeah.
career. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, and then we wonder why there's an issue with turnover in contact centers when we say it's a stepping stone role. The reality is that's not the case.
Yeah. And before we get into the meat of
Sorry,
all of
mate.
this, we need to pause a bit.
Sorry, man. I don't know if you caught that, but my phone just started ringing and
No, I didn't hear it at all.
okay. Sorry, mate.
That's right. I'll pick it up and then edit.
Cool.
So before we get into the meat of all of this, one of the things that you pride yourself on is publicly naming yourself as a larrikin. Now that's great for the Aussie audience, but for those listeners that I have in Europe and in the US and further abroad, what is a larrikin? Why do you use that term?
Look, a larrikin, maybe I'm trying to think of a comparison. I'm not sure there is a comparison. Maybe in America they might say a rascal, but a larrikin, it's someone who's got a disregard for convention, and they're unorthodox. They're independent, and but ultimately they're they like to have a little bit of fun, but they're a good-hearted person, so they mean well, and so. I think sometimes people think larrikin might be a bit more like a bit criminal, a bit sinister. It's not. It's just someone who thinks differently, bit rebellious, bit audacious, but doing it coming from a good place, and wants to have a bit of fun while we're at it, which is important.
For those in the UK, a bit of a naughty boy. And for anybody that's spent any more than 3 minutes around you, I think they'd probably agree with that summary of what a larrikin is. A little bit unconventional, but at the heart of it, a really good bloke.
That's the idea.
Let's pivot a little into what you're seeing in both the CX and the EX space. And I'd love you to start off by talking about how you perceive those two come together. Is there an intersection, and where is that intersection?
Yeah, there definitely is an intersection, and that's kind of what I kind of harp on most of the time. And I think for the most part, thanks to COVID, I think that employee experience got a much bigger billboard. People started to realize that if you treat your employees well, then they tend to treat their customers well, and you have a better customer experience. So that was always my motto, and that's how I always approach it when I was running contact centers. Is just really look after the people that are providing the service, and going so far as to say, because I think contact centers in particular, they that get treated like an adult daycare sometimes, and they would have, you got Hawaiian shirt Fridays and pizza days and dress up days and and streamers and all this sort of stuff around a contact center, and that used to drive me absolutely nuts. I couldn't stand it. I was just like, mate,
you and me both.
You want to treat people like kids, then that's the attitude you're going to get. What's the old saying? Give them peanuts, you get monkeys, kind of thing. But it's the same thing. So one of my missions was always to be proud of working in a contact center. You don't hide it under your breath when someone asks you about it at a barbecue. You want to give that pride, have pride in what you do, and it is a worthy job. It's a hard job. It's something that I think that people underestimate. And to answer one other part of your question, which was just around what am I seeing from a CX space? I think that we're going to see a greater emphasis on customer service and the role of customer service, the human aspect of it. And I think that with AI taking over a lot of and having a much bigger influence and impact on customer service, what I think will happen is that, it probably will take some of the roles. I think that, I don't think it's too far away from taking some of those roles, because unfortunately people have built these roles around tasks instead of building them around people. So if we've got task-driven roles only, I think you'll see them disappear. What I think will happen though is that when AI fails and your bots fail and all these other things, and when people want to make connection,
Yep.
in particular, when people want to this the State of the Nation report last year with which we can put a link in, about the loneliness epidemic is pretty damning in Australia.
Yeah.
It's pretty, like 40% of people feel lonely, and that whole idea of loneliness,
Wow.
you can be in a crowd and still feel lonely. You can
Yeah.
be a part of a big family. I thought this was a really interesting stat, that it doesn't matter whether you're a part of a big family or you lived alone, the people who experience loneliness, it was pretty close to the same. So it doesn't really matter how many people you're around. So this idea of finding connection is going to really drive the CX space. I think for years, and I'm seeing a lot of CX roles and a lot of CX functions disappear. We saw the rise of the chief customer officer, and we saw CX streams or within businesses, and
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of them getting absorbed or disappearing.
Mm.
And I think that's because, as CX practitioners, we didn't do enough to show value, and instead what we did is created all of just these fancy journey maps and put 4,000 bloody post-it notes on walls, and took up all this wall space, and then actually didn't really do anything with it. And consultants in particular paid thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to come in and do that exact exercise for it to change nothing. I'm not saying journey maps aren't important, but I think we focused so much on that we didn't actually do
But
anything.
they're only important if you do something with them, right?
Exactly. Nate Brown says it best. CX, customer experience, is just finding friction and removing it. And I love that. It just boils it down to so simple. And I think that's where we failed as CX practitioners, is we didn't remove the friction, right?
Yeah, Nate does have pardon the pun, an innate ability to just simplify down some of that CX stuff. Yeah,
and so I think that's what we'll see this where I think it'll rise again is how do we find connection? How do we connect with people? And I think that from customer service perspective, it'll become a white glove service. It will be that when you speak to someone, you are speaking to someone who has huge empathy, is there to connect with you and to make those connections.
Yeah, super high EQ. Let AI be the IQ. Remember all the processes and stuff, and use their agents for their EQ.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that you started that out by talking about this connection within the employees. And I have to give a shout out to a long-term industry veteran, now retired, Kevin Penosa, who years ago, ran one of the most successful BPOs in Australia, arguably. And his whole ethos was, love your people, just invest in them. He had like 1,200 people in his call center, and I think he knew every single one of them by name. It's that type of thing. If it's not Pizza Tuesdays and Hawaiian Shirt Wednesdays, what is it then? What is the essence of employee engagement? How do you go about? I mean, if you've got 100 people and they're very diverse, you've got somebody about to retire, you've got somebody its first job in the workforce, you've got parents and non-parents, dog lovers and cat haters. How do you do this?
This is so I still am in like really love gamification. I spent a lot of time developing that out when I was in contact centers. I spoke about it a lot. I've written about it and worked for a gamification company. Yeah, so because I truly believe that there is underlying there the right principles for driving engagement. I think that gamification gets a bad name often because it's seen as manipulating and incentivizing the wrong way, and it really can be if you do it the wrong way. That's exactly what it is. It's manipulation.
Yeah.
but if you unpack it, and this all came about when I came across some this profiling tool that profiled gamers, and it broke them down into four different profiles: your killers, your socializers, your explorers, and killers. What have we got? Killers. And achievers. Yeah, that was the fourth one. And so people play games for different reasons. These achievers want to just get all the achievements. They want to get all the badges. They want to see things through to completion. You've got the killers who just want to go in and just be the best. And they're the guys you see down at the basketball court, happily dunking on a 4-year-old just because they want to feel good about themselves. Socializers, they're there just to connect with others and build this community online. And explorers, people who want to just understand, be like experts, subject matter experts about the game, and they're the ones who find the loopholes and the Easter eggs and the figure out how to cheat at the game.
Yeah.
And when I saw that and went across, looked across the contact center, I saw that same sort of profile.
I was going to say, you've just described a whole lot of contact center employees.
Yeah, exactly. And so this idea that people are motivated by different things, yet we build KPIs for just killers. We just need you to hit this target, and we make these KPIs so binary and pass fail, and therefore that just it said to me that we're doing it wrong. We're building KPIs wrong, and therefore I started to come up with this. How do we gamify this stuff in a really ethical way that taps into what drives at your core. And look, there's plenty of people out there who'll talk about this sort of stuff, but for me, I think it's this idea of people want to do something that's meaningful, that has impact. They want to work for, and we're seeing this more. People want to work for organizations that are purpose driven, because as humans, we're purpose driven. So then we're trying to align our purpose with the organization.
I want to be connected to the purpose. Yeah,
exactly. This sense of self, and this. I want to be able to be myself in my workplace. I don't want to have to always toe the corporate line, I suppose. And this idea, we talked about being a larrikin. That's I would say it's not really accepted in a corporate environment, even still. So there's this element of you got to toe the line, and you got to dress and look and speak a certain way. And I think back to when I first got into the corporate environment. Like I come from a pretty not a really well-off background. Grew up with not a lot of money, up in the country kind of thing.
Yep.
And I had a really thick Australian accent, like really, really ochre for a term. And that didn't bode me very well to start. And I was getting, career counseling, and one of the career counselors said maybe you should go and speak to a speech therapist and have and work on that. And I did. I went and got worked out how do I speak differently that sounds more corporate. And through that process, though, I felt like I lost a little bit of my identity. So I think after I left the corporate environment, and after I started writing a lot more, and realizing that my writing, and we spoke about this just before we started recording, but especially since ChatGPT landed, this realization that if ChatGPT can write it and it sounds just like me, then is it really me? And so that's where I really started to steer into just sound like me as I write. So I write very personally, as if it's you can hear my voice through the writing. The way I speak now is way more relaxed, and I steer into this idea of just proud to be Australian and have that Aussie accent, and be a little bit I'm happy to be 20% bogan and like
Sure.
it's okay.
Oh, now we've
And
got to
so
explain bogan. No, that's fine. Hey,
no,
if
this idea though that
Go on.
people are humans, right? Employees are humans. We're driven by the same. We are all driven by the same thing. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter what you're into, your interests. The reality is you want to have impact in what you do. You want to feel what it has meaning. It has purpose, and it aligns with your own goals. You get a sense of excitement and a sense of self through it all. And if we can be delivering that, that's how you drive employee engagement.
So if there's people listening to this, and I'm going to ask you to give away some content here. If people are listening to this and they're thinking, what is one thing that I can go and do in the next week in my contact center that's not going to cost $10,000 to run a program or whatever, or buy some new software or something? What is it that they could go and try and do that might help with employee engagement? Just one idea.
I think I sensed where you were going with this. I'm going to give this book a plug. Rare Breed.
Rare breed.
It's from
Okay.
Sunny Bennell and Ashley Hansberger.
I'll put a
It's
link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
this book has like changed my life. It's great. It's an absolute cracking read, and it talks about embracing there's always two sides of every coin. And I'll give you an example. Like we see things like rebellion being a bad thing. Being a rebel is a bad thing, but there's some really good traits of being a rebel. Being audacious and is considered as a bad thing, but being audacious has some really great aspects to it. And so it actually flips the coin on all of these things, like being weird. What are the things that are good about those traits?
I make a living out of being weird. So yeah.
There is so it's I would honestly say go and read that book, because after you finish reading it, you'll I think you gain a greater appreciation for people's individuality. And when you start to accept and steer into their strengths and where they're good, you start to get this diversity. You start to understand better, like diversity of thought and approaches to stuff, and that then allows you to think differently about how you recognize and reward people as well. Because if you're just going to continue to just give them the same rewards right across the board, then you're never going to engage your entire workforce. Because you don't understand them.
Yeah.
If you don't understand your people, how can you reward them?
Yeah.
So that's a good one. That'd be a starting point.
Yeah, right on. And picking up on one of the things you mentioned before, and I wanted to explore this anyway. If I asked you to look into your crystal ball, and look 3 years out, 5 years out, something like that, where do you see customer experience and or employee experience going in that time? Like what's the future hold for us?
Yeah, look, I think I touched on it a little bit before. I think it will become very white glove. And that's because, I'll give you an experience that I had recently. I was on Instagram. I saw this book that was getting given away, very flashy little ad. And I was like, yeah, great, free book, I'll take it. Knowing that it's probably not free. There's a catch, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, there was a catch. I got a call not long after saying, hey, you downloaded a book from our founder, and we want to find out if we can help your business, and we want to book you in with somebody. And I was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, that's okay. I kind of accepted that was gonna be the case. But what was really interesting is that I was having this conversation. I was about 3 minutes in. I could hear this person talking. They had a pretty deep voice, but they were, sounded still pretty personal, saying the ums and ahs, and I could hear contact center noise in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until they asked when I could book in the appointment that they then said, can you do, do you want to book an appointment? I said, yeah, like 11 o'clock. And they're like, can you do 1 p.m. tomorrow? And I was like, no, I could do 11 o'clock tomorrow. Can you do 3 p.m. on Wednesday? I was like, no, are you listening? I can do 11 o'clock tomorrow. Can you do 4 p.m. tomorrow? I was just like, hang on, are you a bot? And it came back and said, haha, do I really sound that bad? And I said, yes, are you a bot? And then it came clean that it was a bot.
Really?
Yes, I am an automated assistant. And It was crazy. The fact that they had contact center sound in the background, and uh, it was so good. I was so annoyed that I got fooled by it because of, having so much contact center experience. I genuinely
Yep.
I felt hurt by it. And here's the thing, right? If I'd known it was a bot up front, I don't think I would have experienced that same pain,
Yep.
that feeling of being hoodwinked. And so we're going to see more of that. We're
Yes.
going to see AI automate some of the, these outbound calls and inbound calls, and we've seen that with some of the stuff that Google showed a few years ago, how you could have your virtual assistant call and organize appointments and stuff, and it does it beautifully.
Yeah.
We will see more of that, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's okay. I think it's probably a bit more ethical if we tell people that that's what's happening, but what it will mean is that we will want it, when we do want to speak to someone, we're really connecting properly, and we're connecting with a human, and that's where we need that to. That's where it's going to thrive. So there's going to be a huge focus on connection with
That's going to
hu-
change the role of the contact center agent, though, isn't it? Right?
Absolutely.
AHT is going to become ludicrous.
It
Um,
already is, but yeah, I
yeah,
think it will.
I totally agree.
We've
But it will in
seen
that.
so much churn in the industry, in the contact center industry in particular, and people leaving to and flooding to over to things like aged care and healthcare,
Mm.
because those industries get it. They get it. It's actually about empathy. It's about connecting with people. It's about um, that humanness that we have in ourselves, right? And yet the contact center has tried to drum that out of so many people with stupid metrics. And so I think that that's where we'll see the change. We'll see the change that they'll the recruitment will be about how empathetic are you? How can you use AI to better your job? So there'll be, you'll be AI proficient as an agent. And so there'll be I think there'll be a huge shift in that space.
Yeah. Wow. All right. As we start to wrap up, I have 3 questions I love to ask everybody. I think you've already answered the last one, but let's go with the first couple.
Sure.
What makes a great customer experience for you? We just heard, you get a bit miffed if you don't know that it's a bot or whatever. But when you're out being Luke, doing whatever you're doing, you're shopping down the street or online, whatever. What makes a great CX experience for you?
A great CX experience for me is telling me what you can do. So don't tell me what you can't do. I already know that because I've got to you. If I'm speaking to you, it's
That's why I'm
because
calling you. Yeah.
yeah. So don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do. Even if that is simply taking my name down and calling me back later. Cool.
Yeah.
I just want to hear that.
Okay, fantastic. The second one is, if you could go back in time to your younger self, I realize you're still a young man, but if you could go back in time to your younger self and give yourself some great advice about CX or about your CX career, what would it be? What would you like to tell your younger self?
Oh, look, I think it'd be two things. I think it'd be keep doing exactly what you're doing.
Yep, nice.
Because I think it was you're on the right path is what I would say. You're on the right path.
Okay.
Don't give up on that vision, but be better at change management and realize that not everyone is going to want to keep up pace with you at your pace. I get very
Mm.
frustrated and I change if things aren't changing at the pace that I need. I get very frustrated, and there's times in my career that I have done full transformations of organizations and been hugely successful in those transformations, except for when you look back and look at the trail of humans that you left behind you who
Left a
couldn't
little
keep
blood on the
up.
floor. Yep.
Exactly right. And
Yeah.
so just taking that moment to realize that not everyone's going to be able to keep up, and it's okay to just slow down a little bit and bring people with you, because ultimately that will give the longevity of that transformation.
Yeah, fantastic. The third and final question, and I am going to ask it, but I'm going to preface it by saying you can't say rare breed.
Mm.
What book or report or podcast or whatever what are you reading or listening to? What's influencing Luke right now?
Uh, Next in Queue is a great podcast by Rob Dwyer. I definitely
Yep.
get on that. Love that podcast. It's evolved a lot. Like last season the first season was very much about individuals and telling their story. He's really sharpened the message on that this season and digging into really meaty topics, and they're quite good. Like it's really good. If I was to select another book, I would say Built to Win by Annette Franz.
Oh yeah.
That's a good read. It's very much about aligning cultures with customer centricity. So
yeah, that is a great
read.
book. Built to Win. Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. You've heard it all here, and we're definitely going to have to put some links in the show notes around that report and around Rare Breed. Luke, thank you for sharing with us. If this doesn't wind up with you and I on a stage at a conference somewhere doing a 1-hour version of this, I don't know what would make for good content. I've loved it, and thank you for being a part of CX Sessions.
Mate, thanks for having me. And as I always sign off, hooroo.
Hooroo.
That's it for this session. Let us know what you think or recommend someone for a future session at cxii.com.au. This podcast is brought to you by the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us, and tune in again soon to hear more CX sessions.